I was terrified of being the villain. Not of being broke, not of being alone, of being turned into that headline people share without reading. Gold digger, bitter ex, angry black woman who made demands. Have you ever sat across a long conference table and felt a dozen polite smiles wait for you to explode so they can blame you for the mess they made? So, at mediation, when it was my turn to speak, I made no demands. I didn't fight for custody of our son, I didn't ask for his car, his condo, his retirement, none of it. I looked my ex-husband in the eye and said, "My only condition is that I take your mother." The room went so quiet, I could hear the HVAC apologize. Jason blinked like I'd told a joke badly. His lawyer leaned forward like I'd mispronounced a word. The mediator did that church smile people wear when they're about to thank you for being less trouble than you were allowed to be. She clarified, "You're not asking for assets or support," pen hovering like it couldn't wait to be relieved. "No," I said. Because the only person in that family who ever saw me without making me prove I deserved to be there was Loretta, my in-law. And I had already watched how these people handled burdens. Have you ever watched a man relax because he thinks you want nothing while you're silently praying you can save the one person in his life who still remembers the right names for love? Jason exhaled like a verdict. "Fine," he said, too quickly. "Take her." He turned to his attorney, then back to me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll wire you $10,000 for relocation, care, whatever you call it." He meant hush money for a mother he called expensive as soon as his new girlfriend started using the word baggage. He meant a receipt that said I'd taken the problem off his hands and taken a price to do it. The mediator's pen finally sighed across paper. "Aisha, thank you for your grace," she said, like I was donating shoes. I nodded so I wouldn't laugh a sound that would ruin the rest of the day. Have you ever realized people prefer to applaud your restraint than face their own neglect? I signed where they told me. I tucked the wire confirmation into a folder labeled care, not payment, because words matter in a house where a child is learning how women survive. On the drive home, I kept seeing Loretta's hands, the way they tremble when she threads a needle and go steady when she touches Zeke's cheek. I pulled into my apartment lot and said a stupid little prayer I didn't know I remembered. Keep her safe long enough for me to do this right. Moving day wasn't pretty. My one-bedroom turned into a collage. Zeke's drawings, Loretta's knitting basket, my work laptop balanced on a stack of lasagna pans the church ladies dropped off just in case. I gave Loretta the bedroom. I took the pull-out with the metal bar that finds your spine at 3 a.m. She cried when I fluffed her 2 good pillows and put her photo of her late husband on the nightstand. "Baby, I won't be a burden," she whispered, and I wanted to tear that word out of our walls forever. I said, "You're not," and meant it with my whole back. We ate my collards and her pound cake, and Zeke did spelling words while Grandma hummed Al Green under her breath. Have you ever felt joy sneak back into a room like a stray cat that decided you finally deserved it? On day 3, Loretta pointed at the top shelf of the hall closet. "Get that little blue tin," she said, with the crack on the lid. Inside was a brass key, a folded letter with her maiden name on it, and a tiny ledger. Not dollars and cents, but names and hours in her neat script. "My promise book," she said, tapping the cover. "People who owe time, not money, will need it." I didn't understand yet, but I knew better than to argue with a woman who stitched my hem in the church bathroom before my interview and sent me off with, "Don't let them make you small." That night, the mail came late, and I saw the first truth they'd trained us to ignore. An envelope with Loretta's name on an address to Jason's house, even though she'd lived with me 4 days. "They've been forwarding my pension and my prescription bills to him," she said softly, like she was trying not to wake a lie. She handed me a pawn ticket to her ring I never seen her without. Said we needed cash 1 month for nicer holidays. My chest turned to glass. Have you ever felt reality try to split open in the shape of, maybe it's a misunderstanding, while your bones shouted the correct word? Theft, neglect, story. I lay awake on the pullout listening to the bar argue with my spine and the lies argue with my breath. If I make noise, I become the villain they're waiting to post about. If I stay quiet, she keeps bleeding in places that don't bruise. Around midnight, Loretta's door clicked. She shuffled out with the blue tin in her hands like a sacrament. I told myself I'd wait a month, she said, settling on the edge of the couch so I could see her eyes. But I watched you pack your life into a box of casseroles, and I remembered who raised this family. She pressed the brass key into my palm. Baby, it's time. Time for what? I asked, afraid of the answer and hungrier for it than sleep. She smiled that slow, stubborn smile Southern women use to bless and threaten at the same time. Unfold the letter, dated the year Zeke was born, and point to a name at the bottom. Mr. Chen, family attorney. I made him make copies of everything before your husband could organize me into an expense. This key goes to the box he told me to ignore unless the day came when staying quiet turned into dying by inches. My phone screen lit the ledger just enough to read the first line. Miss Ida, meals for surgery, owes 2 Saturdays. Mr. Lewis, ride to clinic, owes shelf installation. And under that, a single sentence in Loretta's shaky hand, if they call you a burden, call your village. I thought of the $10,000 wire confirmation sitting in my care folder like proof of a crime and a weird kindness at the same time. I thought of a month rolling towards us like weather. I thought of my son asleep in the room with the nightlight shaped like a rocket, and the woman who taught me emergencies don't have to be loud to be real. Tomorrow morning, Loretta said, standing with her cane and all the dignity my ex mistook for weakness, we go to the bank, then to Mr. Chen, and then you let me be the old lady who saves her own life with a key I paid for. I held the little brass key until it warmed to my skin. Have you ever known, with a certainty that makes you dizzy, that the next door you open is going to change the story everyone thought they were writing about you? A month after I took her home, after I took his money with my chin up and my paperwork clean, my mother-in-law would hand me back something he never meant me to touch. Control. But that night, on the couch with the bar in my back and the key in my palm, all I had was a question that felt like oxygen. What if the only demand I ever needed to make was, give me the woman who taught me what love costs, and what if that turns out to be the richest thing I've ever asked for? Before the mediator's pen hovered, before the blue tin and the brass key were warm in my palm, there were 1,000 small moments that built the one sentence I carried into that room. I take your mother. The first week I met Jason's family, I learned the difference between being welcomed and being measured. His sister's smile came with a tilt, like, you're so articulate, like my sentences were party tricks. His aunt asked if my hair would still look professional if it rained. But Loretta, she pressed a wrapped slice of lemon pound cake in my hand and said, if you're hungry, you don't have to be polite. That sounds small until you realize most people in that house thought politeness and silence were the same thing. When I was pregnant and swollen with a baby who kicked back at the world early, Jason took photos of my belly for Instagram and then sighed when I asked him to come to the glucose test. Loretta sat with me for 3 hours in a plastic chair, humming Al Green and holding my hand when my blood sugar dipped. When Zeke was born, Jason posted a caption about my air and left the hospital to shower and reset. Loretta stayed and rocked my son until my arms stopped trembling. She taught me how to swaddle with a dish towel when the nurse was busy and whispered, you can be sacred and tired at the same time. At home, I stacked bottles and bills at a new job like a Jenga tower that wouldn't forgive me for breathing right. Jason loved optics, father-son photos and matching hats, not the 2 a.m. feedings that sounded like honesty. He called me strong, the way some men use the word to excuse themselves from leaning in. He forgot pediatrician appointments and then posted a boomerang of him tossing Zeke in the air at the park like gravity took tips. And every time my jaw clenched, Loretta showed up with cornbread and weather. "Baby, a storm's just air changing its mind," she'd say. When her husband died, the house got big, and Jason got loud. Grief gave him vocabulary for being cruel. He started calling her forgetful when she mislaid a bill, expensive when she needed a refill. Assisted living would do her good, he said, like independence was a fashion she was too old to wear. Loretta laughed in his face. "I ain't an expense report," she told him, and then she told me quietly in the kitchen, "If it comes to it, take me." She said it like a blessing and a dare. I shook my head because the math was mean. 1 bedroom, a kid, a job that tolerates your humanity until the budget tightens. "We'll be fine," I lied. She patted my cheek like she used to pat Jason's. "You don't have to give up the truth to be polite." The micro-cuts turned macro. A cousin accidentally switched Loretta's meds and shorted a week. Jason reorganized her mail because she's bad with dates, and a shut-off notice arrived folded in half, sticky with coffee. He called me ungrateful when I asked him where the pension deposit went in March and said I should be thankful he was handling the boring things. His new girlfriend arrived with words like disruption and simplify hanging around her neck. "We need to streamline," she said one Sunday dinner, eyeing Loretta's walker. "Imagine the freedom you'll feel when you're not tethered to all this baggage." She was talking to Jason. She was looking at me. Loretta sipped her sweet tea and didn't blink. Later, in the hallway while we hunted for her slipper, she said, "You ever notice how people who say streamline ain't ever had to sweep?" I laughed and almost cried. When Jason and I started speaking in email because phones were landmines, Loretta refused to pick a side that wasn't mine. She saved me a seat at church when I stopped coming because I was embarrassed my marriage was a movie people were watching through their fingers. She left Tupperware on my stoop with notes. Heat at 350, breathe at 4. She paid for Zeke's field trip when the piggy jar was short and told me, "Don't you dare tell him who did it." "He'll think you're magic," I said. "Good," she replied. "I want my boy growing up believing black women make things appear." The night before Jason said the word divorce like a promotion, Loretta knocked on my apartment door with a shoebox, her wedding ring and tissue, and a stack of envelopes with my name on them in her old lady cursive. "In case he tries to organize me," she said, that wry humor that kept me from sinking. Inside were copies of her insurance, her pension statement, a letter with a law firm's masthead, and a single line underlined twice. "Durable power of attorney. See addendum." "Mr. Chen, nice man, no nonsense," she said. "I told him to draw it up years ago after your boy started looking in my purse while calling it help. I told him I'd choose the person who knew the price of pound cake and prescriptions." "Loretta," I whispered, "because there's a part of you that forgets you can be a choice when you've spent so long hosting other people's decisions." She squeezed my fingers. "If they try to make me a burden so they can feel like a hero, you ask for me. That's your whole demand." The next morning at mediation, the chairs were soft on purpose so people would forget they were bleeding. Jason arrived in a jacket that looked like a new life and spoke about a smooth transition like we were moving cubicles, not a child's bedtime and a woman's medicine. His lawyer smiled at me like we were friends at a fundraiser. The mediator used the word amicable too early, the way you say almost there to a runner you've watched cheat on their training. I waited while they laid out spreadsheets, assets stacked like Jenga blocks they thought I'd claw at. "Custody?" asked the mediator. Pen lifted. "He can have weekdays," I said. "We'll alternate weekends like we've been doing." Jason's lawyer blinked like a metronome missed a beat. "Assets?" the lawyer asked. "Keep them," I said. "All of them." Her eyebrows did a slow rise. "Support?" the lawyer asked. "No." And Jason smiled for the first time that morning, relief looking good on men who wear it like entitlement. "My only condition is that I take your mother." Have you ever watched a room mishear you because your voice didn't match their script? Jason laughed like we were doing a bit. "Done," he said. "Take her." And then, because he can't resist making kindness transactional, he added, "I'll wire you $10,000 for care, relocation." He wanted a receipt for an absence he was proud of. I wanted exactly what I asked for. When the mediator thanked me for my grace, I tasted iron. Grace without structure is just women doing labor in prettier language. I signed because I needed paper to open doors later that respect wouldn't. I signed because Zeke was at school learning the pledge, and I wanted to pledge to the one person in that family who ever pledged back. I signed because Loretta had asked me in a kitchen that smelled like fried okra and grief to choose her if it came to choosing, and it came. And because she had already made copies, called a lawyer, and bought a tiny ledger where she wrote down the names of people who owed her time, not money, I had a map other people couldn't see. After the wire hit, $10,000 labeled care stipend, the kind of phrase men use when they want to hold their generosity up to the light, I stood in my bathroom and looked myself in the eye. "You will call you a user," I told the mirror. "They will call you a saint. Neither is true. You are a daughter by choice." I folded the confirmation into a folder labeled care, not payment. Words matter. In our house, Zeke reads them. In their house, they weaponize them. In between those houses was a bank box with a brass key and a man named Mr. Chen waiting to say, "I've been expecting you." But before that was a moving day with pound cake cooling on a rack, a pull-out couch that finds your spine, and a woman who whispered, "I won't be a burden," while I swore to tear that word out of our doorway one choice at a time. The tin became our family archive in a house that still smelled like cardboard and church food. Loretta sat on the bed I'd made with my good sheets and patted the dented lid like a pet. "Open it," she said. Inside, a brass key on a red thread, a folded letter with her maiden name on top, and a pocket ledger the size of a palm, cloth-bound, edges soft from being carried in a purse that men thought was just gum and receipts. Not dollars and cents inside. Names and hours. Ms. Ida, post-op suppers, owes 2 Saturdays. Mr. Lewis, rides to clinic, owes shelf install. Choir, extra rehearsal snacks, owes 1 move day crew. Loretta tapped the first page with her fingernail. "It's my promise book. People who owe time, not money. You can spend pride, you can't spend neighbors." You ever feel love show up in inventory form? I traced the columns and realized she'd built herself a life raft without telling anyone who might try to pop it. "We'll need it," she added, and I believed her before I knew why. The proof found us before we went hunting. Day 4, I pulled a stack of mail from our new box, rubber-banded an apology by a postal worker who does his job like it matters. 3 envelopes with Loretta's name have yellow forwarding labels to Jason's address slapped over mine. A pharmacy bill. Overdue. A friendly reminder from a utilities company for a property with her signature but his online access. And a pension address verification Jason had signed for convenience. I felt that old argument in my chest. Maybe it's a mistake. Collide with the math I do when Zeke needs shoes and there's too much month left. Boomerang envelopes don't lick themselves. Loretta watched my face the way only women who have had to lie to themselves to get through a Thursday can. "He said I was bad with dates," she murmured. "I've been running a kitchen inventory since 1978. I know what's missing." She shuffled back to the closet and returned with a pawn ticket tucked into a hymnal, the way you hide bad news inside songs. "My ring," she said, not touching her bare finger, "said we needed cash for nicer holidays. We got a fake pine candle and a Bluetooth speaker that don't connect right." Shame is clever, tries to climb into your throat wearing someone else's voice. I swallowed hard and stared at the brass key on the red thread. "What's this to?" "Insurance," she said, "but let's see what else they took first." We started small and ugly. Called the pharmacy, got the meds list, learned 2 refills went short last winter because family said patient was improving. She was not. Called the pension line, got transferred 3 times, sweet-talked by a rep who used my first name like a leash. "We show an address update in March," she chirped. "Authorized by who?" I asked. By Mr. Jason Carter, she said, stumbling just enough to let me hear the wrong in it. Mrs. Carter's primary. He's authorized for online access. By who? I repeated. She put me on hold long enough to make dinner. When she came back, she talked like a policy manual had been beating on the back of her chair. We can mail you a concern packet? She offered. Mail it where? I asked, and gave her my address twice until she said it right. You ever hear a system cough up the truth like it's swallowed wrong? It did all day. The utilities account for the old house. Auto draft switched in February. The insurance. Premium notices returned undeliverable. Contact updated to Sun. Every call we logged in a notebook with times, names, and the tone of each voice, because tone is evidence you can't fax, but you can remember. Loretta sat with her ledger and made a new column. Who we call when the concern packet gets lazy. Day 6, I put the $10,000 wire in a separate savings bucket labeled care, not payment, because I refused to let words put a chokehold on my brain. I bought a shower chair and a grab bar, scheduled a ramp estimate, and stapled every receipt into a folder like it was going to have to testify for us. Don't spend it all on dignity, she scolded, smiling. Leave some for cake. We made lists and we made pound cake. Zeke med to his grandma under a blanket his cousin said we shouldn't take because it's sentimental. We took it. I caught myself humming in the kitchen and felt guilty for sounding happy so soon after signing a life and half. Loretta swatted the air. Guilt ain't a hymn. Don't sing it. The first real crack, bigger than mail, louder than a pawn ticket, came on day 8. When Jason sent me a photo of himself on a boat, captioned, "Finally breathing." He CC'd his new girlfriend, who replied with a champagne emoji like that was what oxygen looked like. Loretta zoomed in without a word. On his wrist, her husband's watch, which she'd been keeping safe in the back of a drawer no one opens without asking. The family group chat, muted on my phone but not on hers, lit like a switchboard. "So happy for you. You deserve it. Forget drama." Drama means women fighting men's apathy in that house. I watched Loretta edit a response and delete it 5 times. Then she sent a single thumbs up to the chat and said to me, "We go to the bank tomorrow." "What's there?" I asked, already knowing the answer in my bones felt like solid ground. She tapped the brass key. "Box 317 at Cedar Mutual. Mr. Chen told me to keep paying it like a stupid tax even when I felt smart. One day," he said. "Who's Mr. Chen?" "Family attorney. Your father-in-law's before Jason learned how to spell disruptor. He listens better than he smiles." The way he said day sounded like weather. I called Cedar Mutual and asked what we needed to access a box with my mother-in-law present. "Key and ID, the teller said, bored. "Appointment? Walk-in's fine," she chirped. We arrived at 10:02 with a blue tin and a tote like a child we didn't trust a coat rack to hold. The vault smelled like pennies and cold decisions. Loretta's hand shook, but not enough to miss. Box 317 slid out like something tired of waiting for its name to be called. Inside, originals. Her will, a durable POA, a letter with Mr. Chen's masthead, and a stack of bank statements marked in red pen where February should have loved March, but didn't. At the bottom, a thumb drive wrapped in a grocery list. "What's on this?" I asked. "Mr. Chen said for the lazy days the computers like to have," she answered. We signed the access log. The teller said, "Have a nice day," like blood pressure wasn't a thing. In the parking lot, Loretta handed me the letter. "He's expecting us if this ever came to this," she said. "And baby, it came to this." We didn't run. We didn't rage. We made a call. Mr. Chen's receptionist put us on hold for a breath and came back with, "He can see you at 2 if you don't mind him eating a sandwich over your crisis." We didn't mind. We arrived at 159, blue tin between us, and a lawyer 15 years past slick shook our hands like contracts should have fingerprints. "Mrs. Carter," he said to Loretta, "you gave me the one-day look." He nodded at me, "And you must be the day." We put the papers on his desk in a neat stack like an altar. He read without performative sighs, just that little eyebrow move men make when rules are about to get their feelings hurt. "You kept paying the box," he said without looking up. "Good." He tapped the POA addendum I hadn't noticed, the one that said, if her son impairs my dignity or misappropriates my income, her chosen agent activates me. We'll file this today, he said. I'll need your signature, Aisha. My stomach did that first date flip, even though this was a breakup with the past. What happens next? I asked. We don't scream, we act, he said. We update the bank, we revoke online access, we freeze auto pays and reroute the pension. We notice to utilities, we send a preservation letter to your ex, and we schedule a family review in 30 days so he can watch the paper talk. He looked at Loretta and then at me. And we buy your ring back if the pawn shop hasn't already sold their conscience. Loretta laughed, a small, unexpected sound like a room turning on a light. I told him you'd have a list, she said. I do, he replied, and slid a notepad across the desk to me. You're project manager, I can see it on your face. Write this down. Call the pharmacy, log names and times, keep receipts. Don't feed the group chat. Any text from Jason goes to me. If he needs to speak, he can speak where the paper lives. He printed a letter for me to hand the bank that said, politely and with the force of the state behind it, access updated, agent seated. He typed fast and quiet, like a good drummer. He didn't say strong black woman or single mom doing it all. He assumed competence and made room. When we stood to go, he looked at Loretta and then at me. I'm proud of both of you, he said. Let's make June the month you stop apologizing. On the sidewalk, sun too bright for the things we'd just decided, Loretta looped her arm through mine. Put that ledger in your bag, she said. The tin stays here when we leave the house. Yes, ma'am, I said on reflex, because some women earn the ma'am. I meant what I said back on the couch, she added, voice softer than paper. I won't be a burden. I never were, I said. They just couldn't lift what they dropped. She smiled with all her teeth. A month from now, she said, and tilted her head toward a future I couldn't see yet, we'll have them sitting across from us without their emojis, and I'm going to say something I should have said a long time ago. What? I asked. You'll see, she said. Bring pound cake. We went home and I labeled a new folder, Chen, Action, another, Receipts, Care. I wrote the call log on a whiteboard like a war room. Pharmacy, pension, utilities, pawn, bank, ring. Zeke came in from school with a permission slip for a field trip to the aquarium. I signed with a hand that felt steadier than this morning's. Grandma coming? He asked, hopeful. If we can find a bench for her, I said. I'll hold her hand, he promised, and Loretta, listening from the couch, called out, and I'll hold yours, little man.
Night fell. I lay on the pull-out, the couch bar exactly where my spine likes to complain, and stared at the ceiling I was paying for twice. Once in rent and once in what women hand over to be called polite. The brass key sat in a dish by the door like the beginning of a different sentence. 30 days, Mr. Chen said, for a family review. 30 days to build a paper bridge over a decade of trust me. 30 days for a woman everyone called forgetful to remember everything she needed and hand it to me with a red thread. You ever count down to a fight without raising your voice? I did. And I slept, not because the couch was kind, but because next to my keys was a new one that could open a door Jason never thought I'd hold. Setter Mutual smelled like pennies and secrets when the vault door sighed open. Box 317 slid out like a tired truth. Inside, originals with edges that looked like they'd waited on purpose. Loretta's will, a durable power of attorney naming future agent Aisha Ellis, a typed letter on Mr. Chen's letterhead clipped to a sealed addendum, and bank statements with red-penned circles where March should have loved April, but didn't. There was also a thumb drive wrapped in a grocery list like a joke only organized women tell. Have you ever held paper that made you feel both rescued and accused? Rescued because someone thought ahead, accused because you almost talked yourself out of needing it. We walked into Mr. Chen's office at 1:56 with the blue tin like a baby we didn't trust a coat hang to hold. He's the kind of attorney who keeps tissues in a drawer and stamps on his desk. No art on the walls, just framed competence. Mrs. Carter, he said, standing for Loretta like men used to, you finally brought the one-day key. He looked at me and didn't do that thing where people turn caretakers into furniture. "And you must be the day." He read without commentary, just little eyebrow lifts when February tried to cheat March. Then he opened the sealed addendum I hadn't noticed. 2 pages Loretta had signed the year Zeke was born. "If my son impairs my dignity or misappropriates my income, my agent becomes me, and all prior consents are revoked. We seat you now," he said, sliding me a signature page, "but first, capacity. Judges like doctors better than daughters." He called a geriatrics office from memory. "Dr. Rao? Chen, I need a same-week capacity eval. My favorite stubborn client is about to do the right thing, and we're going to make it bulletproof." We had an appointment Thursday, 9 a.m. He printed a bank notice, access updated, online credentials revoked, agent seated, and a utilities letter, insurance letter, pension letter, all with the kind of font that makes bureaucrats sit up straighter. Then he dialed the pawn shop. "This is Attorney Chen regarding ticket number 28193. Ring purchased under financial distress. We are contesting. Hold it for 10 business days and send an itemized invoice." He listened to attitude on the other end like rain. "Great," he said finally. "We'll be in tomorrow with police and a check. Pick one." He swiveled back to us. 2 tracks, he held up peace fingers, care and containment. Care, we schedule in-home PT, RN visits, a ramp estimate, shower safety. Containment, we reroute pension, freeze autopays, revoke access, and send a preservation letter to Jason that says, "Don't touch anything, all further communication through counsel." We also set a family review, 30 days. If he wants to save face, he can do it sitting down with paper in the room. He glanced at Loretta. "You'll speak first," he said. She sat up a little taller. "Good. What about the $10,000? I asked, heat crawling up my neck at the thought of him framing my care as a hustle. Mr. Chen didn't blink. "We treat it like exactly what he labeled it. Care. You'll keep receipts for every ramp bolt and nurse hour. If he tries to call it consideration for abandoning his duty, we let a judge read that sentence out loud and see how it tastes." He slid me a checklist, like oxygen. "You're a project manager, I can tell. Start a binder with tabs, banking, insurance, utilities, medical, receipts, log." He leaned in. "And a tab for noise. Every text, voicemail, group chat screenshot. Screenshots don't raise their voice. Judges like that." I nodded because my bones like it when a plan has places to sit. He glanced at Loretta. "Do you want adult protective services in the wings?" he asked gently. Her eyes went flinty. "Not until he makes me need them," she said. "I'd rather beat him with paper than a badge." "We can do both," Mr. Chen said, "but paper first." I signed the POA activation with a pen that left a groove you could feel with your finger. He notarized, scanned, and emailed like a drummer who knows when not to solo. Last piece, a video. People like Jason love to say Mom didn't understand. Dr. Rao's eval will speak. But I also want a minute of you, Loretta, looking into a camera and saying who you are, who you choose, and why. She nodded once like a queen, then looked at me. "Put on lipstick, baby. We're going to make the internet jealous." We filmed it in his conference room right then. Loretta in her good cardigan, eyes clear, voice steady. "I'm Loretta Ann Carter," she said, full name like a sermon. "I choose my agent because she showed up, not because she asked for anything. If anyone says I don't remember, it's because they don't want to remember what they did." Mr. Chen saved it to 3 places: his server, the thumb drive, and my phone. "Belt and suspenders," he said, "and maybe a life jacket." We left with a folder that felt like armor and a to-do list that felt like church. At Setter Mutual, a teller scanned our notice and updated the address without trying to sell me a credit card. At the utilities office, a rep named Lorna, who sounded like an auntie, whispered, "I'll watch the account for funny business," and gave me a direct line. At the pharmacy, I switched Loretta's refills to delivery and asked for a med sync so nothing ran short again without 6 alarms going off. At home, I moved the $10,000 into a separate sub-account labeled Care, not Hush, scheduled the ramp estimate, ordered a shower chair and grab bars, and stuck every receipt into the binder like it was going to have to sit under oath. I called Dr. Rao's office and put the assessment on my calendar in 3 places because mothers know how time tries to be slippery. And I texted Mr. Chen every screenshot Jason sent that night. You kidnapped my mom. You always wanted my family. You are sick. Each forwarded with 0 commentary. Because boundaries don't explain themselves. He replied once, logged, do not engage. Loretta pulled the ledger out after dinner and ran her finger down names like she was petting old favors awake. Miss Ida owes 2 Saturdays, she said. We'll ask her crew to help on ramp day. She tapped Mr. Lewis, shelves. He builds better than he talks, she winked. We'll have him measure the bathroom for rails. She paused on choir, rehearsal snacks, move day. They'll bring casseroles to the family review so his stomach has to smell the truth, she decided. Have you ever watched a village appear because a woman wrote it down before she needed it? I did. Zeke did his spelling and asked if Grandma would come to the aquarium. If there's a bench, she said. I'll push the chair, he offered. I'll make sure the ramp is in, I promised. Jason posted a photo of a steak and a wristwatch that looked like my father-in-law's and typed earned under it. I didn't reply. I labeled a new tab Noise and slid the screenshot behind it. Then I opened my binder to Care and stuck the shower chair receipt there like a flower pressed and kept for the day you need to prove spring really happened. At 8:52 p.m., my phone lit with an unknown number. Pawn shop. We have your item, a voice said, gruff from a lifetime of pretending empathy isn't stocked. Cash price to retrieve $1,180. We'll be there at 10 tomorrow, and you'll give me a written statement acknowledging financial distress and improper consent under State Statute 825. Silence, like a dare. Bring your lawyer, he said finally. We will, I answered. I hung up and felt my stomach do that flip when you're close to the cliff you can't see yet. Tomorrow, Loretta said from the couch and patted the blue tin. The day after that, Dr. Rao. The day after that, a letter to your ex. 30 days from now, pound cake in a conference room and the paper talking instead of our voices. She nodded at the $10,000 transfer confirmation peeking out of the Care tab. Spend a little on sleep, she scolded, and I laughed because even war rooms need jokes. We turned off lights and said goodnight to rooms that weren't used to holding this kind of steady. On the pullout, the couch bar found my spine and the brass key watched me from the dish by the door like a soft-eyed guard dog. Have you ever lain in the dark and known the next month is going to rebuild the story people tell about you? I did. And for the first time since the mediator thanked me for my grace, I didn't feel erased. I felt aligned. Tomorrow, we'd buy back a ring, seat a power of attorney, and teach a bank how to say my name. In 30 days, we'd invite Jason to listen to paper. And somewhere between those dates, a village was going to knock on my door with drills and pound cake because Loretta wrote them down in ink before anyone could call her forgetful.
30 days moved like furniture, loud in some rooms, silent in others. At 10:58 a.m., Mr. Chen's conference room looked like a picnic and a deposition had a baby. Pound cake on a plate because Loretta insisted, a notary seated, a court reporter plugging in her machine, 2 binders, mine with tabs, banking, insurance, utilities, medical, receipts, noise. His with thicker tabs, capacity, POA, trust, evidence, remedies. Dr. Rao's letter sat on top, 1 sentence underlined twice. Ms. Carter demonstrates intact memory, judgment, and decisional capacity. Jason arrived at 11:02, with a lawyer who wore his watch like it had thoughts, and the girlfriend who says streamline when she means disappear. He didn't look at his mother. He looked at my binder like it was a trick. You kidnapped my mom, he opened, loud enough for the hallway to hear. Mr. Chen didn't stand. He lifted a palm like a traffic officer who's seen bigger cars. "We'll begin with capacity," he said, voice the kind of calm that holds a room by the back of its neck. "Dr. Rao's evaluation is in the record. Please note the date, last Thursday. Ms. Carter?" The court reporter raised her eyebrows. Loretta cleared her church and said her full name like a sermon. Loretta Ann Carter. She spelled it. She named her birthday. She named the current president, even though she didn't want to. She named her address, mine. She named her agent by pointing at me with pride I could feel in my bones. "Any questions?" Mr. Chen asked. Jason's lawyer tried on a frown. "Stress can temporarily improve." "Sir," Mr. Chen said without blinking, "that's not a thing." He slid the durable POA activation across, notarized and time-stamped. "Agent seated, access revoked elsewhere. Next." He turned a page and red circles glowed under the fluorescent. Pension address updates, utilities auto draft shifts, pharmacy refills gone short. The watch on Jason's wrist in a boat photo Loretta did not consent to be posted anywhere. A pawn ticket slid across the table like a dare. "Ring," Mr. Chen said. "Recovered yesterday. Invoice here, statement of improper consent signed by the shop, returned to Ms. Carter." And he placed the ring in Loretta's palm like an apology you can wear. She slid it on a chain that knows truth longer than any caption. The girlfriend broke first. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, looking to the lawyer like there was a line you teach you to say for this. "Jason's been handling so much." "Handling is not harvesting," Mr. Chen said, and he put it in writing. He turned another sheet, Jason's text about dumping a burden to the group chat, date-stamped. Then the wire confirmation, the $10,000 he sent me labeled care stipend to take mom off my hands, displayed on the screen with the brightness turned up enough to sting. "We will treat this as what it says. Care," Mr. Chen continued, "and we will not dignify any claim that you paid your way out of statutory duties." Jason laughed without humor. "You wanted money," he said to me, eyes wet with a kind of fury that needs an audience. "You always did. You found a way to make her your job." I didn't answer. Loretta did. She set both palms on the table, the way nurses do when they need the whole room to look at the right thing and not the gurney. "I asked to take me," she said. "You offered $10,000 to make it look like kindness." She turned to Mr. Chen. "Tell him about your father's paper." Mr. Chen flipped to a tab that said Trust and read like water. Carter Family Trust amended 2015, then again 2017 and 2020. Upon Mr. Carter's death, primary residence and certain investment income to Ms. Carter's benefit for life, discretionary distributions to son contingent on good standing, defined in Schedule C as ongoing contribution to my widow's dignity and care. Clause 6b, if my son impairs or neglects said dignity, trustee shall suspend distributions and redirect resources to protective care measures. Trustee's discretion. He slid copies to Jason's lawyer. Effective today, discretionary distributions to Jason are suspended pending repayment of misdirected funds and proof of compliance with the POA boundaries. Jason's jaw worked like a hinge that needed oil. "You can't cut me out," he hissed. "He's cutting out his own blood." Loretta's mouth went flat. "Your father left me authority to decide what love looked like after he died. I choose the person who showed up to glucose tests and field trips and folding laundry and made me laugh when my bones ached. You can be blood and be a bruise." Her hand found mine under the table and squeezed once. "This is the part where you listen." Mr. Chen nodded to me. I opened my binder to Care and walked the room through the ramp invoice, shower chair receipt, med sync confirmation, RN schedule, PT calendar, every boring, holy thing it takes to keep an old woman steady. I said, the $10,000 is in a separate account labeled Care. We're accounting for every dollar. I will not accept payment for love. I will accept reimbursement for access you misused. Mr. Chen slid a statement of account balance sheets across. Demand letter drafted for $3,842.19. That's what we can see in 30 days. We are reserving the right to find more. Jason's lawyer tried one more lane. We'd prefer to resolve this privately, he said. No need to escalate. Mr. Chen's smile didn't show teeth. Then signed the following: a non-interference agreement, a repayment schedule, acknowledgement of POA activation and trustee authority, and an agreement to cease all direct contact with my clients except through counsel. In exchange, we do not file a petition for protective placement or a civil action for conversion this week. He turned a final page. Also, the video. He pressed play. Loretta on the screen, dated 2 years ago, clear as day. If you're watching this, Jason, I am fine in my mind. I remember who brought me food when no one did, who sat in waiting rooms, who called doctors by their names. If you are upset, take that up with the mirror first. I choose Aisha because she chose me long before the paperwork. The girlfriend's eyes dropped to her phone and stayed there, scrolling a future that wasn't this one. Jason stared at the table like it had betrayed him by being flat. He reached for swagger and came up with noise. "You'll starve without me," he said. But it sounded less like prophecy and more like pleading. Loretta tilted her head. "Baby, I've already fed more people than you know the names of." She tapped the little ledger beside the pound cake. "We brought the village with us. Miss Ida's boys are doing the ramp next Saturday. Mr. Lewis is installing the rails. Choir is bringing casseroles at 5 for 2 weeks. That's love in installments. Your 10,000 was a receipt." Mr. Chen pushed a pen across. "Sign the interference and the repayment acknowledgement, or don't, and we file. Today." Jason looked at his lawyer, who looked at his watch, who looked at Mr. Chen's binder and decided pride doesn't hold up well under exhibits. He signed, each stroke angry, the kind of signature that thinks paper has feelings. The girlfriend asked a little smaller, "Can we just visit?" Mr. Chen answered for us. "Under Aisha's schedule, with respect and without commentary. Try kindness first, it's cheaper than court." When they left, the room didn't cheer. Pound cake never feels like celebration when you've had to eat it between affidavits. Loretta slipped the ring on its chain and laid her hand over her heart. "I should have done this sooner," she said, tired and fierce. "You did it right now," I said. Mr. Chen packed the binder with the ease of a man who knows what tomorrow looks like. "We'll file the trust notices this afternoon," he said. "Banks updated, utilities too. Dr. Rao's reports in the portal, and the pawn shop is now afraid of my Saturdays." He looked at me. "Go home, spend some of that care on sleep." In the hallway, Loretta stopped me with a hand on my sleeve. "He thought he paid you to take a burden," she murmured. "A month later, I paid you in something he never learned to hold, my name on my own life." She kissed my cheek and headed for the elevator with her cane and her ledger, like royalty who prefers good shoes. I stood there holding a folder heavier than shame and lighter than the couch bar I'd been sleeping on. Have you ever felt a number, 10,000, shrink under documents that pronounce your worth out loud? I did. And when we stepped into the afternoon, the sun wasn't approval, it was proof.
I didn't expect it. The day after the family meeting, Mr. Chen filed the notices like clockwork. Trust amendments recorded, banking access corrected, utilities corrected, preservation letters served, paper moved, and the village arrived exactly the way Loretta's ledger promised. Saturday at 9:01 a.m., Miss Ida's boys backed a pickup into our lot, slid out with drills and a box of lag screws, and built a ramp that didn't budge when Zeke did his best test run with Grandma cheering like it was a parade. Mr. Lewis came with a level and quiet jokes, measured the bathroom and installed grab bars where hands learned to trust metal more than luck. The choir texted a spreadsheet titled Casseroles and Care. 8 names, 16 meals, 1 woman who adds pound cake for morale. You ever see love translate itself into hardware and hot food? It looks like men arguing kindly over where to put a brace and women labeling Tupperware with reheating notes and prayers.
In-home PT started Tuesdays and Fridays at 10. Nurse Tasha came Mondays to line up blister packs and remind Loretta that blood pressure is not a suggestion. I ordered a shower chair, a transfer bench, and a low profile threshold ramp for the bathroom. I kept all the receipts 3-hole punched and tabbed into CARE, ramp, rails, RN, PT, with notes in the margins because future me might need to remember why we chose brand A over brand B on a Thursday when the internet went down. I used part of the $10,000 for a better mattress that didn't trap heat and a nightlight that glows like a quiet yes. I paid Dr. Rouse fee, tipped the delivery driver who carried the boxes up 2 flights without groaning, and filed it all under a math I could live with. Dignity first, documentation right behind it. Jason tried a softer lane, texts that read like PR. I want to be involved. You didn't have to do it this way. This hurts me too. I forwarded each one to Mr. Chen with no commentary and closed the thread like a door. The girlfriend subtweeted, "Gold diggers come in cardigans," and I posted Zeke's aquarium field trip photo with Grandma on a bench watching stingrays turn like quiet moons. We were busy. The ring sat warm against her sternum on a thin gold chain, and when her fingers found it, her shoulders dropped a notch like an apology had been digested. On Sunday afternoons, while casseroles reheated, we went through the ledger and crossed off debts that weren't money. Miss Ida's 2 Saturdays paid, Mr. Lewis's shelves done, the choir's move day snacks repaid by 2 pans of macaroni that could make you forget your childhood had hard parts. I added our own entries to a fresh page. Aisha, ramp coordination, owes herself a nap. Loretta cackled. Spend that before it expires. Mr. Chen called midweek with something that felt like both decency and design. We should formalize a caregiver stipend through the trust, he said, not because love charges by the hour, because courts like to see labor named. It protects you if anyone decides to rename your time. I hesitated, the old ache rising. Let me love her without a meter. Make it Loretta's choice, I said. He put us both on speaker. Baby, she said, let me pay for the hours your job can't see. That's not buying you, that's buying me a voice. We set a modest monthly stipend, documented, clean, then taped the schedule to the fridge under a magnet shaped like a gospel dove. And then, 1 month to the day after the family meeting, exactly 30 on the calendar Loretta kept flipped to the right page on purpose, she shuffled to the kitchen table with an envelope in her palm, and that look she gets when she's about to feed you something that won't taste like what it is. For you, she said. Open. Inside, a check for $10,000 from her account, not the trust, with a memo line in her neat hand, tear, my choice. Tucked behind it, a note on the back of an old choir program. Not because you need paying to love me, because you wouldn't take from him what you earned from me. I won't let his receipt sit heavier than my gratitude. Cash it and sleep. L.E. I argued on instinct, you've done enough, this is too much. And she gave me the eyebrow she reserves for people who forget she raised a son through layoffs and funerals and still managed to keep the lights on and the choir in tune. Let me be your client on paper, she said, and your mother in the kitchen. I kissed her forehead and put the check in the care folder to deposit in the morning, then made 2 calls I could live with. One to Miss Lee at the bank, because competence should hear your voice, and one to daycare to move Zeke's pickup 15 minutes later so I could stop speed breathing in traffic. We started tallying our wins where no one on the internet could see them. No missed doses this month, 3 successful transfers without the knee complaining, 1 field trip where Zeke pushed and Grandma wheeled, and both felt important. 2 Sundays, Loretta sang harmony so sweet the alto section clapped afterwards in the parking lot like they'd been fed. Jason sent 1 more long message shaped like repentance and request. I forwarded it to Noise and took a photo of the ramp bathed in late daylight instead. When the piano tuner came, he wouldn't take money because his wife is in the ledger under rides to chemo, owes cookies forever. He tuned the keys and said, "That'll do," and Loretta sat and playing 3 messy hymns with joy that sounded like a room learning to breathe. We bought back time and small currencies, a nap while Nurse Tasha watched her shows with Loretta, a grocery run alone where no aisle felt like a referendum, 10 minutes of standing in the doorway just looking at my people like a greedy person counts light. The trust paid the RN invoices on schedule. The stipend hit like a quiet yes. My paycheck stopped bleeding into a void labeled emergency and started landing in an account that felt like choice. I caught myself laughing mid-Tuesday, cooking greens while the washing machine sang a cheap song, and felt that old panic. Are you allowed to be happy this soon after court? Loretta flicked a towel at my shoulder. "Guilt don't taste good on collards," she scolded. "Salt does." So I salted. And when Zeke brought home a spelling test with 100% and a sticker shaped like a rocket, he asked if Grandma could come to the ice cream shop to celebrate. "If there's a bench," she said. "I'll make one," I told her, and she shook her head and laughed. "That's not how benches work." And then Mr. Lewis knocked on the door with a fold-up stool he'd made from scrap and wrote Loretta's seat on the bottom in Sharpie like a crown. The only time we used the group chat was to send a photo of the ring on its chain and a caption Loretta wrote herself, "Found." No boomerang, no hashtags, just found. Mr. Chen texted 2 words in response, "Logged, beautiful." When sleep came, it wasn't the collapse of a person outrunning fires. It was the kind that lands softly because tomorrow has a scaffolding. The binder on the counter wasn't a weight, it was a spine. The ledger on the coffee table wasn't debt, it was dinner. The $10,000 I let him call care turned into plywood and rails and hours I didn't have to argue for. The $10,000 she put in my hand a month later turned into something else entirely, a correction in a language courts respect and kitchens understand. Not a price tag, a blessing with a memo line. And in that house, the only memo lines that matter are the ones we can read out loud without looking away. I didn't fight for assets or custody. I asked for the one person whose hand didn't shake when it reached for mine, my mother-in-law. People called it strange, whispered that I'd thrown money away, warned that I'd regret taking on a burden. Have you ever noticed how fast people rename neglect as burden when they don't want to lift what they dropped? Burden isn't a person. Burden is the weight of other people's choices spread thin over your back until you forget your own name. Loretta wasn't a burden. She was a life that needed 2 hands and a plan. $10,000 looks loud on a screen and small next to a ramp that keeps a hip unbroken, a nurse who shows up on Mondays, a ledger of favors that turns into doorbells at 9 a.m. with drills and casseroles. Jason thought he paid me to take the problem so he could breathe. A month later, my mill paid me in the only currencies that last: paper with my name seated where it mattered, a trust that called dignity by its government name, a ring back on her chest, a stipend labeled care by her choice, not his permission. That's not a price, that's a correction. I was scared of being the villain, a gold digger who took the mom and the money. But villains hide proof. I made it. I labeled a binder care, not hush. I seated a POA with a notary and a doctor who would say out loud what so many sons pray their mothers will forget. I cashed a check from Loretta because she asked me to let the record show what my back already knew. Love is labor, and labor deserves a line item, not a lie. I declined every text designed to pull me back into a room where performance is a sport and women are the equipment. I kept boundaries and receipts. It turns out you can be gentle and documented at the same time. Community wasn't a Hallmark page. It was Miss Ida's boys arguing kindly about brace placement. Mr. Lewis measuring twice because once is for people who don't plan to keep each other. Choir pans labeled heat at 350 because love likes instructions. The ledger wasn't debt, it was dinner. The blue tin wasn't quaint, it was a bank. The brass key wasn't cute, it was capacity. The lawyer didn't save us, he remembered us. And I didn't rescue Loretta, I partnered with a woman who had already rescued herself on paper in case the day came where politeness turned into erasure. If you're where I was, single mom, black woman, spine already sore from holding the parts of a family no one else will admit are heavy, ask for the thing that keeps everyone honest. Not the car, not the condo. Ask for the person whose breath gets small in other people's calendars. Then build a house around her with rails and names and a binder that courts can read and a village that knows its shifts. Let men with captions talk. Give judges documents. Let apologies find their way to your front step with interest or get forwarded to counsel. Either way, you're too busy keeping someone upright to narrate your goodness. Loretta's ring lives on a chain. Her ledger has more lines crossed out than open because people paid in Saturdays and shelves. Zeke reads to Grandma about stingrays that glide like secrets, and she hums harmony under the parts he's still learning. The ramp glows gold in late sun like a sentence I finally learned how to write. Welcome. The group chat is mostly silent now, except for one photo we sent of the ring with a caption that said only, found. And on my key ring, next to the car fob and the grocery tag, hangs the little brass key that opened a box and a month and a mouth that used to call itself a burden. I made no demands, except to take his mother. He wired me $10,000 to be rid of a problem. 30 days later, my mill handed me a check for the same amount with a memo line that read, care, my choice, and a life where her name sits where it belongs. If you want the moral, it isn't tidy, it's practical. When someone tries to pay you to disappear what they broke, take the person, not the narrative. Build the ledger, write the policy, call the lawyer who remembers your middle name, and salt the greens without guilt. Burdens don't bake pound cake. People do. And the only receipt I needed at the end of all this was a front door with a ramp, a woman who sleeps with her ring against her heart, a boy who believes black women make miracles appear, and a binder that says in ink what our kitchen already knew. Love isn't free, but it's worth every line.